Woo! The Golden Stallion and the Man of Tomorrow, Savzu, the Rated R radio star, here for another...
In the car!
In the car, yes. Radio star in the car. That's such a great rhyme. Why didn't I think of that? Anyway, time for another car cast, but of course, it's not just any car cast. It is your Relationship Rhombus Show.
Oh, yeah.
Woo! Where we cover your relationship questions that come in. Now, I gotta admit, though, first off, we did actually, or I promised that we would talk about a movie that had a wide release just recently. And the movie is Professor.
Is that like Uncle Fester
That's
becomes
a
professor?
Right. Yeah. Professor Marston and the Wonder Women. And this movie came out like last year. It came out sort of around the same time that Wonder Woman itself came out. But it was only had a limited theatrical release. Maybe it was at Sundance or something. And it just, in like the past month or so, it finally came out on home video. Now...
It kind of fits with the Relationship Rhombus.
I think so.
I think this is a good place to review it.
Yeah. This is really the place to do it. Because this is a movie about, frankly... Well, all right, so first off, it's a movie about the creation. It's about Will Marston, who was his... Well, depending on what term you use, you can't exactly say his two wives, but his two, the two women in his life, in his relationship, they had a triad, and he based the character of Wonder Woman that he created in 1945. He based that, in that time frame, he based the character off of these two women that he was in love with, and they were both in love with him. So it's pretty much a true story. Mm-hmm. And
not only that, but there were strong BDSM themes in Wonder Woman and feminist themes that came also from his real life experiences and relationships.
Yeah, so this is a movie, while it's about that, it's also a movie about a very unorthodox relationship, especially in the 1940s. And so that's why I think this does fit in very well with the Relationship Rhombus Show. And wow, I'm just going to put this right out there. First off, usually like these kind of indie films that get limited releases and usually are at Sundance or something like that. Usually, I could care less about them. Like that, it's always some kind of like artsy bullshit that I just,
artsy bullshit. That's pretty strong.
I mean, I love art. But, like, usually it's movies that, I don't know, they have some weird, like, underlying meaning that means something to the, kind of the critical elite.
But fuck if you know what it means, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right. I have no idea what the hell's going on. and honestly, I really don't want to, because there's plenty of great shit to watch out there that's more straight to head or that, has other themes that I'm interested in. But this movie was, and I don't know how often I've said this in the past few years, but I'm not kidding when I say this is one of the best movies I've seen in a long, long time. I mean, this is a movie, for me, that's on a level... So I think that, or one of the best things I think that art can do is be really subversive. And I think this movie is eminently subversive. Like, I mean, it is... what's going to happen...
was Wonder Woman.
As was Wonder Woman itself, yes. And here's what I think is going to happen. You got a ton of people who are really excited about the Wonder Woman movie. Rightfully so, because I thought that was a great film. And you and I, Stephanie, in fact, you can find it on my YouTube channel. We did a full review of it. It was in an episode of Sovryn Tech Prime as well. But anyway, I think what's going to happen is people are going to say, wow, Wonder Woman, such an awesome character. What's the story behind how she even got created? And they're going to find this movie, and they're going to watch this movie, and I think they're going to get inspired. I think they're going to be like, oh, whoa, wow, because we live in a permission-based culture. And what I mean by that is that a lot of people are, a lot of us are raised to think that we have to constantly ask for permission from some kind of authority.
To do literally anything.
To do anything, to even, plant a tree in your backyard, whatever the fuck it is, okay? And because of that, the power of something like a piece of media, like a movie, showing you that something is okay, just putting it on display, like really gives people that permission that they've been raised to look for. And that's why I think this is part of the reason this movie is so subversive, because this does have to do with, again, Will Marston, who, this is the guy that ended up creating the lie detector test, which is how you can figure out that, where Wonder Woman's lasso of truth came from. Right. Go ahead.
He was a professor, and his research involved polygraph machines, and also he had this theory, this psychological theory called DISC theory.
Yes.
And DISC stood for domination, inducement, submission and compliance, or
right.
something like that.
Yes.
And it was this weird, like, BDSM-y kind of theory that he was trying to make academic, but I think he was really just kind of a pervert, and it was...
Well, his wife even says to him in the movie, "You're just trying to prove the whims of your cock."
Yeah, exactly.
Like
make it scientific, yeah.
Yeah, so this, again, a lot of this is a true story. And you end up with, again, in the 40s, this bottom line being is that this younger woman, who she's like 22 at the time, and this woman is actually the niece of Margaret Sanger. She's kind of royalty when it comes to feminism, mm-hmm. So it's not so crazy that her way of thinking.
And her mother was like some famous suffragette as
yes,
well.
Right. And so she ends up wanting to work. She wants to work with Professor Marston and his wife
as a research assistant.
Right.
Yeah, and his wife is working with him. She's basically more brilliant than he is.
Yes.
But she can't get recognized academically because she's a woman.
Right.
And she's constantly in his shadow, and so she uses him as a way to really conduct research that she's interested in.
Right.
She kind of uses that, as a means to, I don't know, not as a means to an end. She really loves him, but she is working within the system as best she can as a woman who a lot of stuff is stacked against her.
Yeah, like she can get a PhD from Rutledge. She can't get it from Harvard, even though she meets all the criteria.
Right. Harvard won't give it to her.
Yeah, they run into... Right, and it's because she's a woman. There's all these things that she kind of runs into. But anyway, the young woman, Olivia... Olive, yeah. She's in love with both of them. Like,
she gets to know them through working as a research assistant with
yes.
them. She is their student.
But she knows Mrs. Marston very well. Like, and she's read her work and everything and thinks that it's brilliant, and she genuinely admires her. Mm-hmm. And she's the first one that she admits her love to, mm-hmm. and kisses her, the whole thing. Right?
Yeah.
Later on, it becomes... we don't have to cover the whole plot. People can watch the movie to see that. There's a lot of twists and turns. Okay? But eventually, she professes her love for the professor. And it ends up becoming a genuine triad. She gets pregnant by Professor Marston, and they all end up living together. Of course, they have
Meanwhile, he loses his job because
yes.
they get discovered. It's obvious that
they are in a
together.
triad relationship. Yeah. Right.
Olive is engaged to a young man, and he breaks it off with her, and he calls her a moral reprobate and sick.
I think she breaks it off with him, because...
Yeah, she's kind of cold.
She hands him the ring, because they're getting engaged, and she hands him the ring and says, "Yeah, well, see you later." So that happens, and then they run into other various trials and everything that are going on, in their community and everything, when people find out what they do. Not just that they are in a triad, but also that they engage in some really kinky shit where they're tying each other up and, role playing and doing all this other stuff.
And during this time, Marston goes to he's walking down the street and he sees this costume shop, and he's asking the proprietor about the costumes, and the proprietor's like, "Are you a cop?" And he interrogates him to find out if he's a cop. And once he's satisfied that Marston is not a cop, he says, "Come to the back, I have all kinds of shit to show you."
Right.
And he's got porn, he's got fetish costumes, he's got burlesque kind of wear, boots. I think he even asked Marston, like, "Are you a devotee of the heel," or something like that. Yeah. He's basically trying to find out if he's a pervert or if he's a cop. And once he's satisfied that he's not a cop, he shows him this whole back room. And so, you know, at the time, it's just hammering the point home that all this stuff is illegal. Not only is it completely frowned upon and looked at as immoral by society, but it's actually illegal. Pornographers can get in huge trouble. It's all underground.
Right.
You know, they have to do things really secretively. And so people don't have access to information about sex, pornography, let alone, like, where would you even get the idea to be in a triad relationship? I mean, that's crazy. That's incredibly revolutionary, you know?
Yeah.
So people just don't have a lot of access to information, which makes what they did all the more radical.
Yeah. And, I mean, so Professor Marston's wife, I mean, she's, like, very laissez-faire as far as love goes and everything, and it seems like, I mean, there was almost a hint of that there had been other there had been other people.
They may have had sort of an open relationship.
Yeah, an open relationship of sorts and everything. So that's a part of it from the very beginning. Yeah, and then all of this kink and, you know, all these different things, like, he bases the character of Wonder Woman that he ends up creating. He ends up going to work for DC Comics, pretty much, you know, just to make it simple. And he bases it both on his wife and on Olive. Like, he combines the two women into one, and that's how he comes up with Wonder Woman. And throughout the movie, there's kind of like this meta-narrative above that is him getting kind of crucified verbally by, you know, the comic code, you know, the comic book authority, saying that they, you know, look at what you're putting into these comic books, this can't be allowed, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And anyway, everything goes through, you know, I mean, we could talk about, you know, there's drama that goes up and down, but they all kind of end up back together. And he dies a couple of years later.
He dies young at 47 of cancer.
Something like that, yeah.
But Olive and Elizabeth stayed together for another 35 years. Elizabeth lived to be 100 years old.
Yeah, and I think they died in like 85, but they ended up a loving relationship that whole time.
Yeah.
I mean, even being lesbian was risque enough at the time, certainly.
Oh, yeah.
At least in the, you know, in the regular world, shall we say. So, but this, I mean, and there's not really much in the way of nudity in the movie. It's not like it shows a whole lot of skin or anything like that.
No.
But there's definitely, I mean, you get some, for a conventional term, you get very tastefully done sex scenes. But it is abundantly clear that, yeah, all three of them are stooping, you know?
Yeah, and that it's love.
Yeah, and it's love. In fact, there's beautiful, when they first, like, finally everybody admits to their feelings for each other and everything, there's this beautiful moment where the wife and Olive are kissing, and then Professor Marston kind of walks. Elizabeth, yeah. Professor Marston walks in, and they end up, all three of them end up kissing, and then of course all three of them end up having sex, you know. And later on in the movie, there's other nice little scenes where you get to see that sort of thing, where like the three of them sleep in the same bed, and they're all cuddling. And it's just, I mean, it's very sweet.
It's adorable, yeah. It's a very sweet poly relationship being depicted.
Yeah, this is in no way a porn, is my point.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, as honestly, as sexy as it is, because there's points where I think it's very sexy, it is also incredibly sweet, but it is not, and I'm not saying there's a problem with this, I'm just saying, though, but it's not vulgar, it's not like, or not terribly, even though there's kind of a spanking scene that happens with, that happens in a sorority house.
Scenes,
there's a couple, yeah. But yeah, I think, I mean, this is the thing, is that some of those scenes, I can barely think of the movie, or at least somewhat mainstream movie, or movie that would at least be on the shelf of maybe Walmart or somewhere that you could buy it, or that would be available on Amazon Video or Netflix or whatever, where, you know, you would have this beautiful relationship allowed to be the beautiful relationship that it is. You know, you see the three of them kissing, you see them laying down together, you see them having sex and having fun and whatever else. I mean, I don't think it's unique. I'm sure there's other films out there that I just don't know about. But I thought that was mind-blowing to actually see that. And it was exciting. Like, I was clapping because I was just so excited to finally see this kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of polyamorous relationship really on display in a big way. And especially, I mean, you cheer for it because you know of the time that it was in, that it was in the 1940s.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think that's something that's really special and something that you don't see often in film. And I liked how tastefully it was depicted and how many different angles of their relationship you saw. Like, it really wasn't about the sex and it wasn't a porn. It was, like, really portraying a loving relationship between three people. And I thought that was really cool. You can't kind of overlook the fact that, Professor Marston was fucking his student, and that is not appropriate. And that is a bit problematic. I'll say the P word.
Yeah,
problematic. So, I mean, you have to kind of keep that in perspective too. But I mean, I think he would have called himself a feminist. Like, he definitely had the attitude that women were naturally superior to men, and that was written into his psychological books that he wrote, and it was in his theory. And he always sort of treated the women in his life as such. Like, he didn't...
No, but he said women could be the president of the United States. I don't know about that. Like, because there's points in the movie where he explicitly says women should be running things.
Right, that's what I just said.
Oh, I thought you said that he was saying men were superior.
No, I said women.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
Play back to recording.
Please continue.
No, I said he has the attitude that women are superior to men.
Right.
And that was completely opposite of what everybody else pretty much thought at the time in the mainstream.
Right.
So, I don't know. Take it as a whole. There's a few problematic aspects, I guess, but overall, it was pretty cool.
I think I could, and this would get...
It is based on a true story, too, so...
Right, exactly. I mean, I think this would play into the conventionalism of the time, and I don't need to defend him. I mean, he did, what happened. But, like, at the time, 22 was, like, well beyond being considered a grown woman, I imagine, at that time. You're only, like, 20, 30 years removed from when the average, or not the average, but when, like, the legal age to get married was, like, 13.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason we call it the bad old days.
Well, right, exactly. So, yeah, but I'm just saying, I don't know. I could almost see where he wouldn't see that as a problem as much as a feminist. And I mean, and he was a person that...
It's not just the age, though. It's the fact that she was his student.
That there was a power dynamic.
Yes.
Right.
He has power over her grades and future.
Fair enough. Yeah. So this is definitely, would you say this is overall, though, a feminist film? I mean, like, the characters, the people, the real people that existed were absolutely feminists.
Yeah.
Like the first, like, they're OG feminists, frankly.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it is, sure. Sure,
okay. So, yeah, I mean, what would you give it as far as a ranking? I'm sure you have more to say about it, but what would you give it as far as, let's say, out of a scale to 10?
Out of 10, I would give it like an 8.5 or a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I would definitely put it there, too.
Yeah.
I would put it there, too. And I don't know if you feel the same way as I do about, like, really how I think how subversive this film was and how refreshing it was to see this kind of relationship on display.
In a quarter mile,
even if it wasn't...
I-89 South Ramp to Concord.
We're on the way to Concord. Yeah. Anyway, even if the movie wasn't, like, perfect, I could imagine that... I mean, and this is the funny thing with a lot of social theory. 20 years from now, 20 years in the future... people could look back at what we say.
Take the I-89 South Ramp.
Or what, what other, I don't know, pick the most feminist podcast in the world today.
In a quarter mile, merge onto I-89 South.
And they would probably say, 20 years from now, that, there's problems. Like, I mean, this stuff...
Of course, that's the nature of things.
Yeah, because things evolve.
More as you grow. And look, there's nothing subversive about fucking your students or fucking your professors.
Right.
Nobody's saying that there is.
No, yeah.
It's basically a, kind of a black mark on this whole story. Maybe one of the only ones.
Sure.
But yeah, there's definitely something subversive about bucking the whole system. I mean, that's one definition of love. Is like, are you willing to go against everything to be with this person or these people? Are you willing to risk to lose everything, to be ostracized by society, to it's you against the world, basically.
Yeah, 2 or 3 against, in this case, 3 against the world.
Right.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you think, like, what happens, if younger women, or any woman, like, watches this movie, like, what do you think, what can you imagine what maybe the effects would be?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's hard for me to say. I mean, I'm just thinking back to my own childhood, and I say this a lot, but I never saw any depictions of bisexual people in media. It would be nice to actually see somebody who is depicted as being bisexual. It would be nice to see depictions of lesbianism that are real and loving and not just like for the pleasure of men.
Yeah.
Faked for the pleasure of men or whatever. And it's nice to see depictions of polyamory that are actually real and don't like stereotype it as just like, essentially sexual promiscuity.
Right.
Loving relationships, families, children being raised by polyamorous families, and the discrimination that can happen to polyamorous families as well. What about self-employment too?
Yeah.
Like he loses his job and he's like, all right, well, fuck it, I'm just going to draw a comic book,
Yeah.
I got some kids to feed now. I better come up with something. So, I think there were a lot of things in it that I would have liked to see that I didn't see in media very often when I was growing up. So, yeah, absolutely. I think it would be positive to see that stuff depicted. If for no other reason than to add diversity to what relationships look like on TV,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, especially the fact that it didn't necessarily, like, not every part of it necessarily had to be sexual. I mean, there's plenty of points, like there's a fun moment where Olive tells Elizabeth, call into, or like kind of teases her into calling into work late, or just calling in so that they
calling
can
sick so they can stay home and fuck.
Right, exactly. I mean, but all of that was just done. I thought it was all done very sweetly, and that's rare alone. Like even that. But then add everything else on top of it, and I think you have a very unique movie that puts a lot of things on display that I've wanted on display for, honestly, like, since I was a teenager, frankly.
Forever, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for a very long time. I mean, I engaged in polyamorous relationships when I was a teenager. I would have lost my shit if there was a movie that, I didn't even know the term really at that point,
I didn't, yeah, exactly. I didn't know what polyamory was when I was a teenager, but I always sort of felt like, I don't think I really want just one partner right now.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so I thought that was absolutely beautiful. And I think the importance of this movie in the future, I wonder. I no pun intended, Wonder Woman, but I really wonder just like how big a deal and how often this movie is going to end up getting talked about in the future, where people are going to say, yeah, well, I saw that movie and I was like, you know what? That's the kind of relationship I want, and I could really imagine that kind of thing happening.
Yeah.
So, anyway, do you have any other thoughts on the movie?
No, I'm glad we watched it.
I thought it was phenomenal.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully there'll be more movies like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it
was interesting too because of the history of Wonder Woman, and it's also interesting to think about Wonder Woman and how much it basically got censored and sanitized.
Yeah, they talk about that, how, and I must have missed this entire, like, era where Wonder Woman didn't have superpowers and they took out a lot of the more BDSM style stuff. Since I've been reading comic books as far back as I can remember, to my earliest memories, and I don't remember, and I'm definitely more of a DC Comics guy than I am a Marvel guy, even though I love both, or I used to love Marvel anyway, but I don't remember where she, like, didn't have her powers and all that stuff. That there was a time, interestingly enough, there was a time frame when one of my favorite writers, one of my favorite people in the world, J. Michael Straczynski, who created Babylon 5, he took over the Wonder Woman title. And he actually made her more of like a spy and kind of like changed her outfit and everything from what Will Marston would have created. And ironically, he did that because of feminism. Like, he didn't need her, her crop, or he didn't need her cleavage, showing all the time and everything, and her legs and whatever. And he wanted to kind of doll her up, which is kind of funny because, I mean, like, I guess that's sort of how the wheel turns, right? Is that now we're to the point where we don't have to show this stuff off so much, perhaps. I don't know what exactly to make of that, but I thought that was interesting. So there was a little bit of a time frame where Wonder Woman was changed recently, but that didn't last long. And I think that outfit, that was designed and, again, based off of like some kind of primitive version of cosplay and BDSM from the 1940s. That outfit's so iconic. It's one of those things you kind of grandfather in, you know what I mean, for lack of a better term. Where it's just like, all right, we're going to let that go.
Sure.
We're going to let that. We're going to keep that one in. But anyway, do we want to get on to another question?
Sure. Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
I think that's good.
Yeah. So that was fun. We've got a few questions here. Let's see.
We should have said at the beginning of this show, like, this isn't just a review of the movie. Like, we are going to be taking people's questions, too.
Yes. Yeah, we will get into your questions.
Wouldn't be a relationship rhombus without it, because we love doing listener questions.
Exactly. So, okay. Here's kind of a heavy one. We've got some fun ones, too.
Okay.
But here's kind of a heavy one.
All right, bring it on.
I have a friend who's in an interesting situation that I'd love to hear your take on. This is really long. Feel free to just give your opinion and not read this whole thing. Well, we'll go through it. My friend's 33, single, and has become involved with a married man with kids in his 50s. She's known him for a few years in the theater scene. They're both stage actors. Here's where things get interesting. Several years ago, his wife had a stroke, and she's no longer the same person he married. She no longer wants to do anything of the things they used to do together. In fact, they don't really do anything together anymore, including sex. She no longer has any interest in sex. They've been to a marriage counselor and haven't been able to make any progress. So he does his own thing, and apparently no one at home really cares, including his kids. They don't ask what he's up to, how he is, etc. I've not met this man, but from what my friend tells me, let's see, he worships her. She says they have a connection that she's never had with anyone. He actually seems present with her. He listens to her. They've made out and fooled around, but have not had sex. She's in love with him, but she doesn't want to be the other woman or break up a marriage unless he's doing it for himself. She's a smart woman and knows that while things may be wonderful between them now, if they were to get into a more serious relationship, it may not be all sunshine and roses anymore, and she wouldn't want him to regret leaving his family if it ended up not working out between them. She's struggling with how to continue with this relationship, and even if she should, it would be hard for her to completely avoid him since they're both in the local theater scene. She is continuing to date other men and keeps her options open, and he knows that. So what kind of advice would you give someone in a situation like this?
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Well, so my first thought was, is her friend asking for advice? But she said, yeah, she's struggling with how to continue this relationship, or
right.
if she should. So, okay, yeah, she wants advice. That's good.
Yeah,
I always want to make sure it's consensual.
Yeah.
Well, I think that I feel bad for this guy, right? Because, he married somebody, they had a major stroke, and suddenly that person that he married isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
They're a completely different person. Now, sometimes people say this, and they're really not that different. They've just had a medical issue, and they have some disabilities now, but they are the same person.
Mm-hmm.
So, I wonder if the question asker or her friend has met the wife,
right.
And what are her impressions of the wife? Is she literally, is he caring for her? Is he, changing her diapers, that kind of thing? Is he assisting her with walking up and down the stairs and doing activities of daily living? Is it a caregiver situation? Or is it just she's mobile and she can do her ADLs, but she just had a personality change and she's also no longer interested in sex with him? I'm really curious to know more about the situation. But, of course, it sucks when that happens, right?
Yeah.
However, you do make a promise when you get married to somebody, in sickness and in health. And in sickness is when stuff like this starts to come into play, right? If you make a promise to somebody to stick with them forever, even if they have a health problem, you're supposed to keep that promise. And I don't know. If she's no longer interested in sex, that is too bad. But think about it if the tables were turned. If you had a stroke and you couldn't do things and you needed your spouse to take care of you, would you want them to kind of just leave you behind in the dust? I don't think I would. I think I'd want my spouse to take care of me. And maybe if I felt like they were taking care of me and I just no longer had any interest in sex, I'd say, hey, I really appreciate you supporting me. I want to still be a family with you, but, you go ahead and get your sexual needs met somewhere else. I feel like that's kind of a fair trade, but I don't know if she has the intellectual
wherewithal
capacity to do that or what.
Sure.
It almost sounds like they're just not talking about it. You know what I mean? It sounds like things have majorly changed, but they're just not talking about it. Now, another interesting part of that email was the kids. The kids don't care what the dad is doing. They don't talk to him, and they don't ask how he's doing or what he's doing. The kids didn't have a stroke, right? They're the same people.
Yeah.
So why don't they talk to their dad? They must know something weird is going on, right? Or that their parents are fighting, or that their parents don't love each other. Like, they must be picking up on something if they're just literally kind of...
If they're toning out.
Tuning out, exactly.
Tuning out, yeah.
So it doesn't exactly sound like it's a very happy family. I'm sure, nobody wants to break up a family, but at this point, is the family already kind of broken up if nobody's talking to each other? I think maybe it is. So the question is, does he want to stay in this kind of companionate marriage and be in, continue things as they are, essentially? They've tried to fix it with counseling. They haven't been able to fix it, apparently. They haven't made any progress. Does he want to stay and continue things as they are, or does he want to end the marriage? I'm sure he'll still see his kids, Can he even do that if he's taking care of the wife? I don't know. But does he want to end the marriage and maybe start a new relationship with this other woman? And in that case, she might become a stepmother to kids that are only a little bit younger than her.
Right.
That would be weird, right? If his kids are in their teens and she's in her 30s, she's closer to their age than she is to his age. So that's weird. That could be weird for some people. I'm not saying it can't be overcome, but, that's a possibility. But if they really have this great of a connection, maybe that's what they want to do. On the other hand, if he leaves his wife who had a stroke, what happens if the friend has a major medical problem? Let's say he gets divorced, they get married, and then she has a medical problem. Is he going to turn around and do the same thing on her? Will she always be afraid of that? So there's a lot of questions here. I mean, it's a very complicated situation. I'm sure she's saying they have a great connection, and I don't doubt that that's true. But could you find somebody who you have a great connection with who has a little bit more simple life situation that isn't kind of in the midst of a quagmire like this that they really haven't stepped out of?
Yeah. I mean, this is something with like a ton of variables, and there's a lot of questions really to ask. I hear this, and I mean, again, we don't know what mental condition that the guy's wife is in.
Right.
Because I would want to have like that conversation. Mm-hmm. And I feel very uncomfortable anytime.
If I were her, I'd be asking a lot of questions. I would want to meet the wife. Yeah.
Because I have a problem anytime, no matter what the health condition is of everybody involved, when there's this like, don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah. Exactly.
Kind of mentality over having an open relationship or something like this. I have a real problem with that. Now, at the same time, I can understand where some people might find that to be kind of dangerous and sexy because of the danger involved. Like, ooh, he's a married man, and this kind of thing. Or the other way around, where the guy is like, oh, I get to, I don't know, sleep around and I don't have to tell anybody, or whatever direction that goes.
Right.
But yeah, I have a real problem with that kind of setup.
Right.
Where everybody involved, everybody that it impacts, doesn't know. And honestly, that includes the kids.
Yeah. Because it affects them a lot, I'm sure. I mean, I'm really curious about this wife, because, like, if she is independent, if she's able to do her own, like, to take care of herself, and she's not dependent on him for care.
Yeah.
Yet she's not interested in having sex with him. Like, is she having affairs? Is she sleeping around? Does she want to sleep around?
Well, she apparently doesn't want to have sex anymore. That's what I got out of the question.
She doesn't want to have sex with him, But we don't know if she doesn't want to have sex at all.
I thought it sounded like it was sex at all, but regardless, yeah, sure.
Well, we don't know. I mean, that's an assumption, right?
Yeah,
so I'm curious about her. Is she having affairs? Why doesn't she want to get divorced? Is it because she's dependent on him, or is it because, she thinks that he still loves her and he would be hurt if they got divorced?
Yeah, I don't.
Or is it because of the kids?
Yeah, I mean, and I guess to kind of play off the way what you were talking about earlier, Stephanie, like the idea of like, what if it was me? Like if it was. I mean, and I guess I can never really know how I'd feel after a stroke, because that can really change. I mean, that can really affect somebody's mentality. You kind of can come out of that a different person. But right now, if for whatever reason I couldn't sexually please my partner, considering at least me how important I think sex is, I would absolutely allow them to. Or, I would say it's okay not to allow them, but I would say, yeah, go ahead, like, get with other people and, stay with me. I love you still, but, like, get with other people and get your rocks off or whatever, That's the way that I would be about it. But, yeah, you just don't know with this. Again, as far as advice, the best advice is, sounds like there's another 2 or 3 people that need to be asked about how they feel about the relationship that these 2 stage actors have.
Yeah.
Okay, and they're not being asked.
Yeah,
and they're not being talked to, the kids and the wife. So that's my thought on it. And do not take the guy's word for anything.
In 2 miles, take the I-93 South exit toward Manchester, Boston.
Woo! On the way to Liberty Forum. What else you got on that, Stephanie? Anything further you wanted to share there?
To me, it sounds like, and this is easy for me to say because I'm not in it, but to me, it sounds like more than I would want to deal with personally in a relationship. More complication, more potential for unethical behavior. Let's just say, I could easily imagine this guy just being a dog, And he's just trying to have his cake and eat it too.
Right.
And he's not being very in tune with his kids. That's the thing that really tipped me off.
Yeah.
I don't like this guy.
That would be like an easy pattern that this could really be.
Yeah.
Sure. So
my advice would be break it off. Don't see him anymore. You have this amazing connection. You're going to see each other in the industry, but just keep it professional. Keep dating, find someone else.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people out there who don't have this complicated situation hanging over their head.
Yeah.
And you can have a great connection with them, too.
Yeah, in my experience, it's something I look for, not just because I work out or whatever, or, not just because fitness is, like, a big deal to me, but, like, I do wonder about, like, medical conditions, like, of potential partners and everything. Because, those are responsibilities you're taking on. There's nothing wrong with taking them on, but I think it's good to be aware of that and understand that those can be stressors and challenges, and maybe, those are things you don't want to have to deal with. And look, this what is, no matter how secretive, your potential relationship is, she's a part of it.
Right.
Unavoidably.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to consider, how do you feel about that? And I thought that your point, Stephanie, that, wow, like if this guy is just, again, if you don't know how she really feels about it, this guy's just willing to sleep around just because you're not, like, his wife isn't meeting some need of his. That's some pretty questionable behavior.
Oh, it sounds like he would be perfectly happy with an affair. Staying married to his wife, not talking to her about any of the issues, but staying married, not telling his kids, having a secret relationship with her as his piece on the side, his much younger piece on the side.
Right.
Right? And he'll never be able to marry her because he's already married. He'll never be able to fully commit to her because he's already got a family.
Right.
And his family's going to probably come first if his wife needs him or his kids need him. And he's not going to get divorced. So I think he just wants to kind of have a side piece. to meet his sexual needs, and that's not a real relationship for her. Maybe she's going to want more than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And his wife probably might want more than that too.
Sure.
She might not want a husband who's checked out because he's having an affair with another person.
Yeah, right.
And lying about it.
Yeah. No, well, I think those are the points to hit on it. Want to move on to another question?
Yeah.
Okay, so the audio might just suddenly sound very different now that we're going to this other...
Oh, yeah. In the best way.
Now that we're going to this other question. A couple other questions, at least. So...
awesome.
It
wouldn't be a rhombus without, like...
No.
Doesn't a rhombus have at least have 4 sides?
Yes. So you got to do, like, 4 things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we're... We're in a hotel room right now.
We're on location.
We're on location in bed.
In bed.
Completely in bed. Like, literally in bed. And we're gonna finish this baby up.
Oh, yeah.
So... And these questions...
You're all in bed with us, actually.
Yeah, there you go. It is a giant king-size bed. This is really
There's
something.
room.
Okay.
It's roomy.
All right. So, let's see. Let's do this one.
What's the next question?
This is... So, I've heard Brian say in the past that Vermont is the only state in the U.S. that technically allows you to walk around outside naked. In the real world, no one would probably be allowed to do that, of course, but how do you feel about nudism/naturism? Do you think people should be allowed to do that, or that it's some kind of natural state, even when a lot of people probably want to wear clothes? What about obese people? What do we do about guys walking around with boners? Or people potentially touching erogenous zones in the open? So
that's a good question. That's very good.
Yeah.
So, well, first the thing about Vermont.
Okay.
That is actually not a Vermont state law, as far as I know. It's like a town in Vermont or like a county or something.
Right.
Where there's a specific naked activist who goes and like rides a little scooter around naked in the summertime. And everyone's just like, oh yeah, that's Bob. He does that every year. And of course in Vermont, the climate is such that it's really only like July and August where you can actually do that and be comfortable.
Sure.
So the problem is self-limiting. Bob goes away for the winter,
Right.
So I think it's actually like a city ordinance in like a specific town in Vermont or a specific city if you
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
I think you're right.
Yeah. I mean, you can get away with skinny dipping in public parks and stuff. Not public parks, state parks. Like if there's privacy,
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, you have to go to like a specific nudist or naturist resort or camping ground or whatever in order to get away with being naked in public. So wouldn't most people want to wear clothes was part of the question, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I think most people do want to wear clothes, and we have clothes for a reason because they protect us from the elements, right?
Sure.
But there are certain situations where the weather is just perfect for being naked. And, if you don't want to wear clothes then you shouldn't have to. I mean, also clothes protect you from bugs, from dirt getting in areas,
Yeah.
And not all clothes are a way of expression too, or a way of expressing yourself, for example, like if everybody was walking around naked, it's almost like a school uniform. It's like you don't have any clothes for people to judge you by.
Yeah, but couldn't that almost be seen as an advantage? I mean, like as a good thing?
Yeah, absolutely it could, because it kind of equalizes everybody and humanizes everybody, right? We all have the same birthday suit more or less underneath our clothes. But also, some people really enjoy using clothing as a way of expressing their sense of fashion or style.
Sure, right.
It's an artistic thing. And so I think that should be acknowledged too in any discussion about naturism, of course there's art you can put on your skin, like tattoos. Some people use tattoos as a means to express themselves, or hairstyles or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I could see like people putting on like some pretty wild I don't know, like, I mean, people could paint themselves, frankly, or they could wear like some kind of, I don't know, tassels around their arms or something like that.
Jewelry.
I mean, I think there's ways to do that without like needing the stigma of people wearing clothes.
Sure.
I don't know if stigma is the right word, but yeah, or the cultural norm of people wearing clothes, like that can be done, I think, in a lot of ways. But sure, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what about obese people? What about them? I mean, if you want to be a naturist or a nudist, you're going to have to get used to seeing all different kinds of bodies,
Which I think is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful.
Me too.
So I guess to answer really first, the question of should people be allowed to, and I'm guessing maybe kind of the point here is, okay, most people want to wear clothes. If tomorrow suddenly it was legal, or there wasn't a law that said you couldn't walk around naked, how would you feel just walking around naked? Even though most people want to wear clothes. I wouldn't
do it because of harassment and because of creepy, unwanted attention from men.
Yeah. I think that's the thing, and I think that kind of answers the obese thing too, because I think naturism or nudism, whatever, and they're more or less the same thing.
Synonyms,
I think. I think it really requires a different mindset. People really have to think about things differently. Overall, because because otherwise look, you can talk about people being nude having boners. You're going to have guys, with full clothing on that are going to have boners because they're going to see women walking around nude perhaps, and they've never seen that before, or they've seen it before, but it would be that would be a very new experience. So, I think people obviously should be able to, because I can't imagine why the fuck you'd why it's ridiculous that it can even be banned,
Yeah.
and that there's even a law against it.
I was just thinking, don't you think people would adjust to it pretty quickly? I mean,
if a lot of people did it, yes. If it's just a few freaks, or quote unquote freaks, I mean that in a good way, no.
Well, okay, for example, take the Folsom Street Fair in San Francisco, where people are walking around in kink garb. A lot of people are semi-nude.
Sure.
Or topless or whatever. I mean, I don't think everyone there is walking around with a boner.
Yeah, maybe they would get used to it.
One.
I don't know. Maybe they would.
What happened in Victorian England when women suddenly started wearing fewer petticoats and showing their ankles? Did all the men just walk around with boners? I don't think so. I think they get used to it. I think, people could be shocked perhaps, but I think if you're out in public, then I don't think you're going to necessarily become aroused.
Maybe it would. Maybe they would get used to it very quickly.
Yeah.
And because I can imagine. Now that I think about it, I could imagine where some people who would want to be crass about it or something. After you pass the 10th or 12th person that's nude, you're going to get sick of it. You're going to, why continue to be crass? Because you're not getting any reaction out of it. And it's kind of meaningless.
And as for what do we do about, naked men walking around with boners who are exhibitionists? Well, I mean, that's also a self-limiting problem. Even if someone is turned on by being nude and gets a boner and it offends people, well, they're not going to literally be walking around with a boner all day, every day, 24/7.
Yeah,
it can't. That's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So
there is Viagra.
That's going to take care of itself too, right? I mean, eventually, a person who is naked is just going to adjust to being naked, and they're not going to be able to maintain that kinky state of arousal forever.
Yeah, right.
And so eventually, it'll just be normal. They're not like they have clothes on, they don't have a boner most of the time.
Yeah. So, about people touching erogenous zones
in public,
out in the open, I think this is tough, because
well, if it's unwanted touching of erogenous zones, that's sexual assault.
Well, of course, right.
If it's wanted touching, is it so different than what we do right now? People kiss in public. People,
Well, that's the thing, right? If everybody's walking around nude, does suddenly touching a dick or rubbing parts or something is that the same thing as a kiss? Does that equate a kiss?
I don't know.
Or, like, how does that
I think
change?
people have boundaries where even with their lover or partner, you know, you might grab your lover's butt in public, but you're not going to grab their dick or their boobs.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true. Yeah.
Even though you could very well, what's stopping you? Well, it's kind of like social mores. So I don't know. I think they would still be in place in a place where nudism or naturism was more common. What about on the beach? Do people just grab each other boobs? No.
No. Hopefully
you really
not.
don't see a lot of fondling of genitalia and breasts on the beach.
Yeah.
And that's a semi-nude situation. So
Right.
I feel like I'm making a pretty good case for that the sky wouldn't fall, that there wouldn't be anarchy. If
No,
there
I
was
think you are too.
widespread nudism.
Yeah, no, I think you are too. So, I mean, like myself, like I'm totally a fan. Like I'd be, right on board with that. There's a million times, a year. I mean, that I can think of. And I say a year because it includes all seasons, where like I really wish that I could just, walk around, nude. Like I could go outside, I could get the mail nude, and or at least I could step out the door nude. And I mean, it's fucking annoying that like I can't just do that and that I have to put on clothes. So yeah, I can appreciate that, but I think you hit it, Stephanie. I think you're right. I think maybe the sky wouldn't fall. Yeah. I'm reminded of when you and I were on Free Talk Live. I remember we had like this really. It was a major conversation that had to do with like if you're walking past like a person's window and you see people fucking like in there, like is that indecency? Because their windows
they're
open.
on private property.
They're on private property. Okay, so their window's open, but then like can you tell them okay, you have to close your window if you're going to get naked in your house? Like I mean, I don't think we ever came to like a stern resolution on that.
Yeah. Well, okay. If they're fucking in and their windows open during the day, you're not going to be able to see in without some effort. If it's brighter outside, than it is inside, so problem solved. But if it's at night and they're fucking and the lights are on, and you can look in, you've got some exhibitionists on your hands because obviously they know what they're doing. So either you don't look in their window or you look in their window and enjoy it with them and participate in their kink. Or you find a different route home.
I don't think they automatically are exhibitionists. Like I don't.
Well, it's likely that they would figure it out, if they didn't want to be fucking in front of the window.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know, but that's part of the reason that, or like that kind of problem is where I think nudism and naturism, like that's where I wouldn't mind if it was normalized,
Because you want to walk down the street and see people fucking in the window?
No, because that way it's not a problem. Like I remember there was
it could still be a problem even if nudism was.
Yeah, I mean, then change the game because like in New York there was a huge court case that had to do with like, and it was in the city that I lived in, not New York City either, because a guy was watching porn while he was driving around town. He had a little screen in his van, and there was like porn playing on the screen. You know what I mean? And
wow.
And you can say that, well, he's not supposed to have a screen or anything like right there.
He's driving,
but that wasn't what the case was really about. It's about, wait a minute, can he watch porn and can he have like the audio and all that shit playing and going around and stuff? And you can say, well, the guy's just being an asshole. Okay, fine. But we, as much as some of us may be annoyed by it, we do have the right to be assholes. And like, was he doing something wrong?
Wow. No, I don't think he was doing something wrong. I mean, don't people listen to people are blasting like, music that has sexual themes in it.
Sure.
And there might be kids listening or whatever.
Sure.
And obviously you can roll up your windows, you don't have to look in his car.
Right. And the fact is that if he was playing We Were Soldiers or Saving Private Ryan or something like that, no one would have blinked an eye. Nobody would have given a shit.
They'd probably call him a patriot.
Yeah, exactly. They probably would have clapped for him or something. So, I don't know. This is just one of those areas where I think that there's a lot of double standards.
Yeah.
And it's an area where I think I'd like it to be allowed. That way those double standards could hopefully die.
Yeah.
because you'd get a lot of, I mean, you already have activists that are trying to put a stop to this shit, but.
Well, absolutely. But, there's another thing we have to separate out too, which is that we have to be really careful not to conflate nudity and sex.
Right.
Because nudity is not always sexual.
Well, that's a changed mindset.
Yeah.
That I was talking about. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it can be sexual.
Right.
Like the people that say, I remember during the whole free the nipple thing where people were trying to be on the beach topless, and there were, some lawsuits and court cases because of that. People were saying, "Oh, breasts are not sexual. They're not sexual organs. I wish everybody would stop sexualizing breasts." And it's like, well, that's really a disingenuous argument because breasts can be sexual. They're
Right.
not always, but they can be.
Right.
It's not all the time. So nudity, the same thing with nudity. Nudity can be sexual, but it's not always sexual.
Yeah.
And it's important to draw a distinction between the two because I think there are people who say, "Oh yeah, it would be great if nudity were more commonplace and that we could just, hang out naked with no big deal." But it's an entirely different thing to be putting on a live porno show and fucking naked in front of your window versus just stretching naked or doing naked yoga or something,
Yeah. I mean, that's very true. I mean, at the same time, like sex, I don't think should really be seen as like abhorrent or something that should be necessarily censored or things like that. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only reason I agree, sex shouldn't be something that's abhorrent. But even adults might not necessarily always want to see sex.
Yeah, sure.
They might not always be in the mood for it or whatever.
Sure.
Right then. And for children, I think you could argue that, sometimes kids can see stuff that they're not really ready for or they don't understand, and it can fuck them up a little bit.
Yeah. Especially
if they have no one to talk to about it or, they're confused or whatever.
Yeah, I think over time, like any of the stuff getting normalized, I mean, eventually would be normalized. Like, in fact, I even remember, and this is in the 90s, I remember, like, it was, at least as teenagers, anyway, like, it was potentially, like, I knew gals that didn't want to, and this is fine, it's their call, but, like, the idea of kissing in public was, like, oh, you don't do that. You don't kiss in public and all that stuff. And I mean, like, and that they were taught that by their parents, that was bad. Obviously, I think that's gone out the window by now. Like, I can't imagine anybody getting mad about that. But, okay, let's change questions. So.
Well, did we answer the question?
Oh, I think so.
Do you think that question asker was pro-nudity or anti-nudity?
I can't really tell.
Yeah, I can't tell either.
It's kind of, it's very down the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like the erogenous zone thing, I don't know if people just start like rubbing each other in those places, and
I seriously doubt it.
Yeah.
Because they don't do it now, but they could.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
The clothing isn't what's stopping them.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. So I'm pro nudism. I'll just put it that way. So, okay.
I'm neutral on nudism.
You're neutral?
Yeah.
Okay.
Neutral.
That's funny. All right, let's go for this one. And some of this I'm actually not going to answer, but make sure that it's known that I will. Since this is February, maybe you can give the history of Valentine's Day, how it became such a commercial quote-unquote holiday, and maybe some of some equivalent celebrations from ancient Rome or Greece. Also, would love your thoughts on the story of Lysistrata. Okay. I don't think we have time to go into like the history of Valentine, and Stephanie's falling asleep. So
no, I'm not. I'm just yawning. I'm just comfortable.
Okay.
I'm not falling asleep. You're having a very stimulating discussion.
Don't fall asleep yet, but anyway.
No, I'm not. Relaxing.
Yeah, but
we're rubbing erogenous.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm not going to give like a history of Valentine's Day here, but I am going to do an episode where I talk about that. In fact, it might even be a part of a Sovryn Tech Prime. I might decide to do that, which I've done that in the past.
Oh, cool.
Where I've talked about like Lupercalia,
Yeah.
Lupercalia, which is kind of the original holiday for this season, as it were. And there's some others too, but that's kind of the big one that I think a lot of people point at, which is really interesting. But I do want to talk about Valentine's Day in general with you, Stephanie, and we can talk about the story of Lysistrata, which is an ancient Greek play that, well, we'll talk about the abstract of it. I think that's what's particularly interesting. But anyway, all right, first let's talk about Valentine's Day. What do you think about Valentine's Day? Do you think it's bullshit? Do you enjoy it? I mean, like what's your hot take on Valentine's Day?
I mean, I think it makes a lot of people feel bad. Because they're single.
If they're single. Yeah, right.
I think it makes a lot of people feel left out. And honestly, when I've had great partners like you, Brian, every day feels like Valentine's Day. It's a celebration of love. And you don't need an excuse to celebrate love. You can just enjoy each other every day. You don't need I feel like you shouldn't need a reminder to celebrate your love once a year. And if you need a reminder and you're only celebrating it once a year, maybe there's a problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
I know there's anniversaries and stuff like that, but yeah, I think it makes a lot of people feel bad, and I don't like that, how bad my single friends feel on Valentine's Day.
Sure.
And I also don't like the pressure and expectation it puts on a lot of people. Like, there's a lot of people out there who are like, oh, I hate Valentine's Day. Men and women, you know?
Yeah.
Men are usually like, oh my God, my wife wants me to get her some kind of chocolates or flowers, and I'm just sick of this shit. I have to do this every year, and it's overpriced. And then the women are like, oh God, it's Valentine's Day again. Like, he's going to think I want him to get me flowers and chocolates, and he's going to get resentful. Or maybe they get into it. I don't know. But, yeah, I don't know. I've never been one for sort of traditions and holidays as an anti-traditionalist myself.
Yeah.
You know? I've never been super into that, but I don't know. I mean, I could live without Valentine's Day, but excuses to celebrate love, that's great.
Yeah, sure.
Doesn't have to be February 14th, though.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I already got you your Valentine's Day gifts. I got you your little bat bag. I got you your stripper pole.
Yes.
I got you. I think there's some other things. So, yeah, like I don't mind it. I don't mind that it exists.
Yeah.
You know, and I rather, when it comes up, I usually will talk about the more pagan or the more ancient versions of the holiday, like Lupercalia.
Oh, in my mind, the best way to celebrate it is with sex stuff, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the best gift you could give or get.
Yes. Yeah, all the way. I've definitely been one of those guys, and I don't know if it's because of my my ethnicity or upbringing of just being a cheap bastard, but like I used to be really big on no, let's go on the 13th, or let's go on the 15th.
Yeah.
Let's go out then.
You don't want to do what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, because I mean, everywhere you go, it's like an hour wait time, to get in, or you have to have a reservation. Like, I mean, and people have no idea, like restaurants in New York City, what it takes to reserve for Valentine's Day is outrageous, and it's really stupid. Like, I mean, there's no call for that, especially since, getting into the sexual stuff's way more fun anyway. So yeah, it's just one of those ones that I don't mind, but if you're somebody that really has a problem with it, or like has issues where like, or I think even like if you're not one for flowers, or if you're not one, or if you're a guy that's like, we could do something else or something like that. I think that's actually a very healthy thing in our present culture to like talk about pretty early on in the relationship, is your expectations for Valentine's Day. And the thing is that might sound weird, but I don't know. Like
we talked about that early on in our relationship, and we were on the same page.
Yeah. Because it can. Some people take it really fucking seriously, and you better know about that ahead of time. Otherwise, you're going to create a fight. It's either a fight before, or and then you can learn forever if it ends up being a fight, or an argument, Or you can have that argument on Valentine's Day when you drop the ball based upon what the other person wanted, you know. I don't know. So that's, yeah, I'll get into the history of all that in another episode, because it is pretty fascinating. It is pretty interesting. When you know the history of it, you kind of want to throw it away. But, or, well, depending upon what version you go by. Anyway, the story of Lysistrata, which is this ancient Greek epic that has to do with a woman who she wants to put an end to the Peloponnesian War, okay, in ancient Greece. And the way she figures out to do this is that she effectively convinces like a bunch of her friends, or not a bunch of, but she convinces like the women in her area, stop sleeping with the soldiers. Tell them you won't fuck until this war's over.
Ooh.
You know? Now, this is something, and basically what I want to talk about is the abstract. Mm-hmm. That abstract idea of like the idea of withholding sex as activism. Mm-hmm. Okay. Like at first blush, you know, and I'm very familiar with this play. Like I love the sound of it, and I'll explain more, but I love the idea of it where it's like, okay, yes. And I've talked about this before, where, you know, if people would stop sleeping with policemen, soldiers, and, you know, all these other, you know, murderers that happen to have a badge or a uniform, you know, who knows what could change. The problem I have with saying that, though, is that that's putting, like, the responsibility for these wars and for all this other bullshit on women. Mm-hmm. That they're the ones that have to solve it. And right. I think that's completely unfair and ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd love it if the world, you know, if we were in a world where, and look, there's gay people, bisexual people, so it shouldn't just be women anyway. Mm-hmm. I'd love if we were in a world where everybody thought that, you know, the idea of somebody being in those professions of violence was just so disgusting that they'd never get in a relationship with them. Like, as soon as they said, oh yeah, I'm in the military, oh yeah, I'm in the police force and all that stuff, you'd just be like, oh, get the fuck away from me.
Yeah.
You know? But I don't know. I mean, so what do you think about that kind of activism? You know? I mean, and that happens today. Like, this gets done in Middle Eastern countries all the time where, you know, I mean, you can read news stories now where people are like setting up, like in Turkey, where they're setting up to, you know, women are banding together and saying, we're not going to sleep with you until you stop this bullshit, you know?
It's some kind of war?
Yeah, I'd have to look up the specifics of what the situation is, because sometimes it's for multiple situations.
I mean, the biggest war that's been going on since the beginning of time is like violence against women.
Oh, sure. And
women haven't stopped that because women still sleep with men.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's going to work. I think the cartel is going to break. I mean, unfortunately, I would love it too if people were repulsed by people who are in professions of violence, but it actually seems like it's the opposite, where that's a turn on for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they are actually attracted to people who wield power like that. So I think it's going to be really hard to get. The problem with cartels is they always break. Right.
Yeah, right.
Somebody always breaks it.
Right.
Somebody's gonna go back on the agreement, and if not, then maybe the soldiers will just start fucking each other.
Well,
right? Or they'll just start raping people. I don't know. I mean,
sadly, I think historically that's
them.
Exactly what would happen.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you think that it would...
I think it's unrealistic.
It's unrealistic. It's never going to work. Yeah.
Especially if a woman is married or something to a soldier.
Yeah.
You know, is she going to torpedo her own relationship because she wants to, like, do her part to stop the war?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think her alliance realistically would be more with her husband, but...
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I suppose it's a nice idea, but at the same time, I don't know, just... going to be really difficult to coordinate. But I mean, you can always, in your own personal life, you know, if you're a woman and you don't like the idea of violence, you can always just pledge not to fuck any cops or whatever, you know, and you can pledge not to be with anybody who is violent in their profession or in their personal life. You know, if you want to stop violence against women, yeah, seek out partners who are exceedingly gentle and would never do violence to you.
Right.
And,
right.
you know, you've stopped it in your own life, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that kind of thing, I mean, again, in my wildest dreams, yes, you know, men and women would be appalled by people that take on these professions, you know, and by people in these professions. But yeah, I don't really ever see that necessarily happening. So, but I mean, because that education, that mindset of being appalled by that, I mean, that's just, you know,
it's not how we grow up, yeah.
Well, it's not how we grow up, but also like just that education alone would likely be enough for people to, you know, you wouldn't have to withhold the sex. They could just realize, holy shit, you know. I mean, and I know I've been there. I was in the military, and I realized eventually, like, wow, this is not okay.
Right.
You know what I'm doing. Or you can look back on it and say, wow, that was not all right. That was terrible, you know.
Yeah. But what if, I know this isn't how you came to that conclusion, but
sure.
But what if a soldier was brought to the conclusion that what he was doing was wrong through love? You know?
Oh, because someone loved him?
Yeah, because someone loved him.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you can, we have this mindset, I think, that when someone is capable, and like capable as in proficient at violence, that you feel safe with them. That safety gets, that gets construed with, I think gets misconstrued with actual safety, and safety is a part of love. You know, like that feeling of feeling safe with somebody else is a part of love. And so I think that there's a lot of confusion in that. And that's sad, because you can replace violence with love. You can replace it with business. You can replace it with, you know, trade. There's all these different things you can do that can create an interaction with other humans and you know, create win-win, or, I mean, maybe even some kind of win-lose, but whatever, that can create, you know, these scenarios that people often run to the gun or, you know, run to violence to try and solve. And I don't know. I don't know if a soldier, like, I don't know if somebody with that mindset would see love as like if they could come to the realization that, oh no, I don't actually need to do this anymore. I don't need to be in this. I just want to, you know, love this person. Granted, you know, I may have heard stories or known people, or shall I say, friends of friends, perhaps, that, you know, they'd find some Arab gal and they'd go run off, you know, fall off AWOL, and they'd be done, you know, because maybe they felt they found the love of their life or something like that. So I guess maybe, yeah, that could happen. You're right. That could possibly happen. So maybe that's not, maybe the tale of Lysistrata isn't exactly the best solution.
Is it? Yeah, I mean, I just think it's kind of fictional.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly is. But I mean, that doesn't mean that people aren't really trying it, you know, out there, and they are. So, okay. Well, I think that kind of answers that one. You want to do one more? Sure. Okay. All right. We'll just shorten it. Okay. Yeah, actually, I mentioned this one to you earlier. So, showering together. Couples showering, or at least couples. Good or bad? Like, what do you think?
Good or bad? Well, I mean, it's a personal preference, obviously.
Sure.
I enjoy showering with you, Brian.
Yeah, we actually do shower together. And I think that maybe that's how the question came up, because I've talked about that, I'm pretty sure, at some point. I did that Periscope episode from in the shower. and I think I showed off. I was like, yeah, notice there's two heads in here? Two shower heads. But anyway, yeah, it's a personal preference. But
yeah, I mean, some people prefer to be alone in the shower.
Sure.
I've had partners who preferred to shower alone.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, it is actually a lot harder to fit two people under one shower head.
Yeah.
So sometimes just for practicality, but if you get a double one, you can both fit in the shower at the same time, and that's nice. I don't know what else is there to say about it.
Yeah, no,
Some people think it takes away the mystery when you see your partner. Like, have you ever heard this advice before? It's in, like, marriage books and, like, women's magazines where they say, oh, the key to a happy relationship is separate bathrooms, right? You gotta keep the mystery. Don't let your partner see you, like, grooming yourself. And, they should be wondering how you make yourself look so pretty. And I think that is complete bullshit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can get so mysterious, you get so mysterious that you're not talking about anything, that you're not sharing intimacy, that you're missing out on opportunities to spend time together and be close. And I don't know. I'm not really for that. Not really a fan of that personally. Yeah,
I can appreciate like showering alone, that like it's really a time where you get to be in your own head. And it's a peaceful time, and as long as you're not bringing in your waterproof phone or something with you, that like it's time away from screens and everything, like it can be a really beneficial time. A lot of people talk about how they get their best ideas when they're in the shower. And if you're showering together or with someone else or multiple people, however that's working out, often enough, you might lose that time. But at the same time, like you and I mean, we shower together, and I think we come up with like some of our best stuff. But I mean, that's we're thinking together in the shower, and it's a time when we can kind of check in and be peaceful and and talk with each other. So I guess there's advantages maybe both ways. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like that's. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't really have such a strong opinion on it. I mean, I agree, Brian. Like, when we're in the shower together, sometimes we're kind of companionably silent and just kind of thinking our own thoughts. But then usually one of us will say, like, hey, what do you think about this? I just was thinking of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had some of, like, our most epic conversations in the shower.
We had a lot of good ones.
Yeah, I mean, like, really, really, really epic stuff. Like the kind of the big stuff, and I think it's the stuff that people think we talk about all the time. Because we've had so many people come up to us. It's like, you two must have the most epic conversations.
Oh, we do in the shower.
Yeah, and we kind of do. Yeah, I mean, we do talk about the big stuff sometimes. The big questions of morality, philosophy, the meaning of life, and all that. Yeah. That does happen there. It's true. But it happens in the bed, too, like right now.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes we record it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, I think showering together often is fine. I think, doing all that can be a lot of fun, unless you really have that strong preference of where you really want to be alone in the shower, then fine. But I don't know. I think a lot of times that desire for alone time from like a partner has more to do with like if you have kids, you want to be alone from you want to be like alone from everybody, like because you just never have that moment of peace. That's kind of what I think more goes on there, but that's just my opinion.
I actually agree.
Yeah, because I mean I can't like. Let's see. I mean, like if someone comes up to me, granted there's never only two options, but if someone comes up to me and says, okay, do you want to take a shower alone or do you want to take a shower with a smoking hot woman, like in there with you? Gee, which one am I going to choose,
Right.
And obviously I'm going to choose to take a shower with a smoking hot woman, and I just so happen to regularly do that. So, But anyway, so I think that's all there is to say about that. I mean, it's easy enough to install a second shower head, even if it's meant to be like a single.
Yeah.
Stooping in a shower, you really do have to have like a good sized shower for that. Like you got to have a shower kind of meant for that.
Yeah, it can get tricky, especially if you use lube and it gets on the floor.
Yeah, and if you're like little people, maybe it kind of works, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It can be tough.
I find a lot of the standing up positions to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. You really gotta. There's a lot of lot of biology and body type that's got to match up to where that sort of stuff is really practical, you know. But anyway, so how about we wrap it up with that? I think that was kind of a fun one.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, and we can, now we can have some fun or go to sleep or something.
Yeah, well, now we'll have our alone time.
Yeah.
We'll let them figure out the mystery and that.
I hope I remember to turn off the microphone here. But
yeah. Oh, you better.
Well, I don't want them to hear us snoring. All right.
Snoring.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you, Sovryn Tech co-host. Lovely and hyper intelligent.
Sovryn Tech Master.
Oh dear.
Master of Sovryn Tech.
Anyway, all right, folks, that's it. I will see all of you on the other side. Woo!